the villain in this story, or one of the villains, and the people complicit are as evil as anybody I've ever encountered.
The Osage Indian murders was a serial killing event that took place in Osage County, Oklahoma, United States, during the 1910s-1930s. Newspapers described the increasing number of unsolved murders and deaths among young adults of the Osage Nation as the Reign of Terror. Most took place between 1921 to 1926. At least 60 wealthy, full-blood Osage persons were reported killed from 1918 to 1931. Newer investigations indicate that other suspicious deaths during this time could have been misreported or covered-up murders, including those of individuals who were heirs to future fortunes. Further research has shown that the death toll may have been in the hundreds. The tribe had retained mineral rights to its reservation. Each tribal member had what were known as head rights to the mineral rights on communal land. When valuable oil was found on their land and leases were sold for oil production, each member with head rights was paid a share of the lucrative annual royalties for leases by oil companies. In 1906 and subsequent years, U.S. Congress passed a series of laws, ostensibly intended to help the Osage retain wealth, that created a system of guardianship for minors and incompetents, as determined by and under the jurisdiction of Oklahoma's local county probate courts. The Oklahoma courts routinely found Native Americans to be incompetent without considering mental capacity. For example, a guardian was appointed for one Indian woman on the basis that her savings suggested a lack of spending, which was evidence that she did not understand the value of money. Many guardians used their appointment to gain control over the ward's wealth for their own personal benefit. During this period, numerous white men married Osage women to become guardians of their estate. Some of the murders were committed to enable whites to take over the head rights of Osage members when inheriting property after deaths. The Osage found minimal assistance from local law enforcement to investigate the deaths, as it was dominated by powerful whites working in their own interests. Later investigation, including that of the Bureau of Investigation, BOI, the precursor to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, revealed extensive corruption among local officials involved in the Osage Guardian program, including lawyers and judges. Most of the murders were never prosecuted. Nevertheless, several perpetrators were convicted of murder, including William Hale, a powerful rancher who ordered the murders of his nephew's wife and other members of her family to gain control of their head rights and oil wealth. Two other perpetrators implicated with Hale, Henry Grammer and Asa Kirby, died under suspicious circumstances during the BOI investigation. Several others involved were convicted of lesser charges, such as perjury, witness tampering, and contempt of court, for attempting to impede the investigation. In 1925, the U.S. Congress changed the law to prohibit non-Osage from inheriting head rights from Osage with half or more Native American ancestry, in an effort to protect the Osage. The U.S. government continued to manage the leases and royalties from oil-producing lands. Over decades, the tribe became increasingly concerned about these assets. In 2000, the Osage Nation filed a suit against the U.S. Department of the Interior, alleging that it had not adequately managed the assets and paid people the royalties they were due. The suit was settled in 2011 for $380 million and commitments to improve program management. In the early 1920s, 18 Osage and 3 non-Osage people in Osage County were reported murdered within a short period of time. Colorado newspapers reported the murders as the Reign of Terror on the Osage Reservation. Some murders seemed associated with several members of one family. On May 27, 1921, local hunters discovered the decomposing body of 36-year-old Anna Brown in a remote ravine of Osage County. Unable to find the killer, local authorities ruled her death as accidental because of alcohol poisoning and put the case aside. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was not alcohol, but a bullet fired into the back of her head. Brown was divorced, so probate awarded her estate to her mother, Lizzie Q. Kyle. Kelsey Morrison, a petty criminal, later admitted to murdering Brown and testified that William Hale, a prominent local rancher, had asked him to do so, along with his admission. Morrison implicated Hale's nephew and Brown's ex-boyfriend, Byron Burkhart, in her murder. Morrison testified that, after meeting Brown earlier at her sister Molly Kyle's home, he and Burkhart took a heavily intoxicated Brown to 3 Mile Creek, where Morrison shot and killed her. Morrison was also responsible for the murders of William's stepson, who died of a suspected poisoning in 1922, and Tilly Powell Morrison, who died of a suspected poisoning in 1923. One of Morrison's associates later said he had confessed to both murders to him. Morrison received a life sentence in 1926 for his participation in the Brown murder. However, in January 1931, his conviction was overturned because he had been promised immunity in exchange for his testimony for the prosecution against others involved in the murders. He was released from prison on July 16, 1931, after completing a separate sentence for assault with intent to kill. Morrison, 38, was killed in a shootout with police on May 25, 1937. The body of another Osage, Brown's cousin Charles Whitehorn, also known as Charles Williamson, was discovered near Pawhuska on the same day as hers. Whitehorn had been shot to death. 2 months later, Lizzie Q. Kyle was killed. Local authorities had initially ruled that Lizzie's death was due to old age. By that time, Lizzie had head rights for herself and had inherited the head rights from her late Osage husband and 2 daughters. Her heirs became fabulously wealthy. On February 6, 1923, Henry Roan, another cousin of Brown's, also known as Henry Roan Horse, was found in his car on the Osage Reservation, dead from a shot in the head. Roan had a financial connection with Hale, having borrowed $1,200 from the cattleman. Hale fraudulently arranged to make himself the beneficiary of Roan's $25,000, equivalent to $461,000 in 2024, life insurance policy. On March 10, 1923, a bomb destroyed the Fairfax residence of Anna's sister Rita Smith, killing Rita and her servant, Nettie Brookshire. Rita's husband, Bill Smith, sustained massive injuries from the blast and died 4 days later. Shortly before his death, Bill gave a statement implicating his suspected murderers and appointed his wife's estate. Later investigations revealed that the bomb contained 5 US gallons of nitroglycerin. On June 28, 1923, Hale and Burkhart put George Bighart on a train to Oklahoma City to be taken to a hospital. George Bighart was the son of James Bighart, the last hereditary Osage chief. Hale was Bighart's neighbor and friend, and had recently been designated by the court as Bighart's guardian. There, doctors suspected that he had ingested poisoned whiskey. Bighart called attorney William Watkins, W. Vaughn, asking him to come to the hospital as soon as possible for an urgent meeting. Vaughn complied, and the 2 men met that night. Bighart had said he had suspicions about who was behind the murders and had access to incriminating documents that would prove his claims. Vaughn boarded a train that night to return to Pawhuska. In the morning he was missing when the Pullman porter went to wake him. His berth on the train had not been used. Vaughn's body was later found with his skull crushed, beside the railroad tracks near Pershing, about 5 miles, 8 km, south of Pawhuska. The documents Bighorn had given him were missing. Vaughn's body was so badly disfigured that the coroner could not be certain whether the man had fallen off the train or else been beaten first and then pushed off. The coroner ruled the cause of death was suspicious, but did not rule that it was murder. Bighart died at the hospital that same morning. 13. Other deaths of full-blooded Osage men and women, who had guardians appointed by the courts, were reported between 1921 and 1923. By 1925, at least 60 wealthy Osage had died and their land, and head rights, had been inherited or deeded to the guardians, who were local white lawyers and businessmen. The Bureau of Investigation, BOI, which preceded the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, sent investigators to the reservation and found a low-level market in contract killers to kill the Osage for their wealth. In 1995, writer Robert Allen Warrior wrote about walking through an Osage cemetery and seeing the inordinate number of young people who died during that time. In 1925, Osage tribal elders, with the help of local law officer James Monroe Pyle, sought assistance from the BOI when local and state officials could not solve the rising number of murders. Pyle presented his evidence of murder and conspiracy and requested an investigation. The BOI sent Tom White to lead an investigation. Because of the numerous leads and perception that the local police were corrupt, White decided he would be the public face of the investigation, and most of the agents would work undercover. The other agents recruited were a former New Mexico sheriff, a former Texas Ranger, John Berger, who had worked on the previous investigation, Frank Smith, and John Wren, a member of the Ute Nation who had previously been a spy for the Mexican revolutionaries.